Lori Martin, and it is my joy to be here tonight with you and to every day have the opportunity to work with the kids at Berkman Elementary, where I serve as the principal.
My name is Maria Isaguirre. I'm an ESL teacher, and I teach at Woodrow Wilson and Vermont Elementary School. And my concentration is ESL. So.
I'm Susan Gwynn. I teach second grade at Eisenhower Elementary in Erie County, Junction City.
I'm Renee Castle. I teach first grade at Lee Elementary.
I'm Jim Armendariz. I'm principal at Ogden Elementary, and I was telling my seatmates earlier that I slept in this very room as a college student. I've been where you are, and I'll tell you, I think Amanda did a great job of giving you a pitch for your professional organization. There's no one does more for you and the profession than KNEA and NEA. So I too urge you to join as a student member, and expect you to be a professional member also.
I teach fifth grade at Ogden. Also, I'm the vice president of the NEA Bar Local. So if you are interested, I can tell you what happens after you become a member. As from a student to a first year teacher, you do get kind of a discount. Not as good as a student discount, but it's a pretty good discount. And it's really good for you to keep that professional organization. If you want to be a professional, you have to stay as a professional.
Hi, I'm Nancy Cole. I'm the principal at Lee School, and I'm excited to be here tonight and glad to see that there are a lot of you out there that are wanting to come into our school and work. I'm glad to meet all of you.
I'm Brett Nelson. I'm the principal at Marlette Elementary School here in Manhattan. I'm also happy to be here and to know somebody.
I'm Linda Duckworth. I'm a third grade teacher at Northview Elementary.
I'm Susan Camphouse. I'm principal at Eisenhower Elementary in Erie County Schools, Junction City. And if you're a senior, and if you're a junior or sophomore, we're always hiring, so stop by anytime.
So is Jen.
Especially Berkman.
Professional development.
So now it's open to you guys. Just pop whatever questions you want to, and they'll answer it.
What are you worried about? What are you anxious about?
What are some key things to keep in mind for classroom management that you guys have seen or have dealt with throughout the years?
Well, I'll say a few words and anybody can jump into. I would say in classroom management, as beginners, that's going to be an area that most people struggle with as beginners. And principals know that when they interview, and so it's important that you have a plan. It may not be a plan that works with every group, every year, but it's important to know what you will do, what you're expecting to do in that area, what you've read about behavior management, what you've seen, what you've been a part of, what you're hoping to try. And then realize that you are a beginner in that area, and it's important to look to the other teachers in your building that are more experienced and administrators that can kind of guide you through those hard or more difficult situations. And don't be afraid to ask for help, because that is probably the area that most people struggle with as beginners. And it doesn't mean that you're not knowledgeable and you're not prepared to be in the job that you have. It's just that you're a beginner. So I would say don't be afraid to ask for help.
Have a plan, be organized. It's easier to be tougher in the beginning and loosen up as the year goes on, as opposed to being too loose and trying to get control later. Randy Sprick with Safe and Civil Schools is an excellent resource for looking into, has a great program. Be respectful, be kind. When you have to discipline, do it when you can in private. Do talk to your peers, because they have, check with your building, because your building will probably have some sort of across-school guidelines, and but be organized, be ready.
And there's a great myth that you're writing that plan for the students and their parents. The reality is you're writing that plan for you. So it's kind of like your script, and there's nothing wrong with stopping, taking a deep breath, pulling out your plan and saying, What did I say I was gonna do? And then having the courage to really follow through. I can still remember that first time I had to follow through and how hard that was. And it gets easier the more you do it. You'll feel mean the first time. And that's just part of that rite of passage as well. But your power will be in your autonomy, and you're controlling what happens in your classroom, so don't hand that off to anybody else. You maintain it. Go ask for help, but you stay the person in charge in your room. And that means that you follow through very consistently with any consequences that you promised those kids that would happen. And the really cool part about that is that once they know your word is gold and you follow through with what you promised them, then that also means that you will follow through with any of the rewards that you promised them too. And that's how you build trust and a solid relationship with those kids.
And just make sure they know your expectations from the get-go. And on a daily basis, I mean, in my classroom, every day we say the pledge and we say our class rules, like our promise that we've made together. And so they know that when they make, they mess up, and they will, then I say, okay, let's talk about it. This is how we messed up, why, what can we do differently next time? Just having that conversation with them, not in front of the class, but in that one-on-one situation. And then if they know the rules and they repeat those and they have those in their brain and those expectations, then, they know, then it's a lot easier to go from than to throw a rule at them that they've never heard before.
And I would like to add to that you always teach what you want to see. Don't expect a student to come into your classroom, no matter what grade you're teaching, even if it's 6th grade, to know how to line up the way you want them to line up, or to know how to sharpen their pencil or when. That is something I spend the first 2, maybe 3 weeks of the school year. I do some academics in there, but those first 3 weeks, I am setting up, this is the procedure for doing this thing. This is the procedure, and we practice it and practice it ad nauseum to you, but my classroom right now runs like, nope, someone else could come in and the class knows what to do for the first 15 minutes. I hardly interact other than one-on-one for different things, getting information, they need to tell me something, that sort of stuff. They have procedures they do all day. It's because I spent the time to teach them. There's not a behavior problem if
I
they know.
even raise my hand when I walk in there.
I can admit to it. Her classroom's the bomb.
I also want to add too that coming in that first year, you're very concerned that the students will like you. Everybody wants to be liked and have those positive relationships. But with the kids, what Gloria said before, that consistency is what, when you build that trust, then they do like you. Even if you have to follow through in an uncomfortable way for yourself, you feel like you're being mean, you're not, because kids, they want those guidelines. They want to know what the expectations are because they want you to like them just as much as you want to be liked. And so being firm doesn't make you a mean teacher.
Here's another resource, the first 6 weeks of school, and it also helps walk you through those relationship building pieces. And the thing that is sort of a disadvantage is a lot of people students teach in the spring when you're walking into a classroom that already has a management system in place. So if you could start up or observe a class in the fall when the teacher is actually teaching those procedures and rules, it's very helpful. But if you have your bag of tricks already kind of lined out, as you said, planned, then you'll be much better prepared.
You're going into a profession that's about people. And anytime you work with people, your entire profession is going to function around relationships. Relationships with your students, first of all. Relationships with the parents of those students, second of all. Relationships with your colleagues. If you are good at building relationships with the people who think the same way that you do, who have the same goals as you do to teach the children, and of course the parents who are the most invested in those children and the outcomes that you're going to produce, you're going to do well. If the kids believe that you're working hard for them, you know their name, you know what they like, you know their dog's name, you know what kind of books they read, they're going to work for you. If they are willing to work for you because they respect you and they like you, guess what? They also like math, they also like reading, they also like science because they like you. You don't want them to like you as a friend. You want them to like you and respect you as someone who cares so much about them that you do anything. You spend your own money for materials. You stay up late at night giving them feedback on their papers that they didn't maybe work as hard as you wanted them to. But they know, if you like them, how hard you work and what you want out of them. If you build a good relationship with any of those components, any of those stakeholders in education, you will do well. I had an ed psych teacher right in this very room who said, if you are small, young, cute, or female, you're going to have a problem. Well, that's 99% of you. It's not true. When I got in there and I realized, okay, I'm not young, cute, female, or small. I'm not gonna have any problems. But my daughter, who is 5 feet tall, blonde, cute, she doesn't have problems either. So don't believe that the first year is about survival. Your first year should be one that you feel like you can thrive in. I hate when people tell you just gotta survive your first. No, it's not true. You have a responsibility to teach those 20, 25 kids, however many you have. In Junction City, they have bigger class sizes, so apply in Manhattan. But anyway, it's about relationships. Build those relationships, you'll do just fine.
And our teachers do a very good job of, classroom management, and how Mrs. Slaughter has said before, that when they come into the specials, the special areas, and they actually do a pretty good job with us too.
Do you guys have another question?
Yeah, how do you guys prepare for subs?
When you have a sub?
Yeah.
I'm extremely detailed. I usually write 2 or 3 pages of notes. I have a general outline of what my day is going to look like while they're there, and then specifically in this is what you're going to do. And I always tell them the go-to student-free subject. So because everything in my room is pretty procedural and routine, they all know what happens next. I'll say, my expert for math today is this kiddo. Ask them what to do, where this information is. I make sure and show that kid, I'm gonna have you guys do this today, this is where the information is. So I have an expert kid for each of my different class subjects, and I have an expert line leader for each time they leave the class to go somewhere, so that my sub doesn't feel like they're flying blind.
Have an emergency subfolder ready before the end of your first week in your classroom, because you never know when something's gonna happen and you can't get in your classroom to have plans ready. And it's not fun to have for someone to have to go in and try to figure it out. So have an emergency subfolder ready that has materials that can keep a classroom busy for the day, because in an emergency sub situation, that's probably what it's gonna be. But don't wait until the first month of school to do it. Do it before the end of your first week.
And treat yourself like you're a sub, especially that first year, because reality is, you are. Every day is a new day, it's a new story for you. And so the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to have it all ready to rock and roll tomorrow morning when you come, so that you can go home and release it and get some good rest and come back renewed and be ready for those kids. Now, sometimes you have obligations that don't allow you to stay until it's all done. But if you can, I can't encourage you enough to be able to be ready to go, to leave it behind you, and to renew yourself so that you can come back and give 100% the next day. There's folks that drag it all home and drag it all back, have to go to the chiropractor once a month, sit for their back. Some people are morning people, some people are night people, but you'll just sleep better knowing you're ready to go.
I have once I get my schedule at the beginning of every year, I make up basically a sub plan for every day, 8:45 to 9 o'clock, because your schedule will generally be pretty consistent, and then, back up if there's an assembly and that kind of stuff, then I'll jot extra stuff down. But I have 3 kids of my own, so I never know when 2 a.m. wake-up call is going to happen, and I have to go in sick. So, just for me, that's been a lot more effective. I know that it's a Monday, Tuesday, and I keep when I do plan out my week, I have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday folder. So like any copies I need, any of that kind of stuff, so I can tell my sub or my team teacher, and I can say, okay, everything's in the Tuesday folder. So that way, you know, I can just go in real quick for 15 minutes and make sure everything's ready for the day. So any of those little things that may take a little bit of extra time at the beginning of the year, computers are great because I have mine all typed out, and so I just had to tweak them from last year to this year and change times and those kinds of things. So, but even with that, like she said, typed out, my lesson plans are probably 4 pages long because it's literally like it's. And I teach first grade, so they are very much a. You better do it like Mrs. Castle does it. So it's like first you do this, second you do this. They're like very much like this is the step-by-step process. But it seems like a daunting task, but if you do it, like you said at the beginning, within your first week or two school, if you get it done, it's done. And then I don't have to worry about having a sub if I have a kid sick or if I'm sick or something happens, so.
Don't assume you're stuck. Just getting knowledge of education. So when the fireman shows up this year to teach, and this is the second time he's subbed, and the first time was PE, and now he's teaching third grade all day, you can't have lots of acronyms and things in there that, because they don't know. So, and there's more and more, there's a lot of emergency stuff, so be specific in what you want them to do, and don't assume that they are going to come in with the same knowledge that you came into the classroom.
And as new teachers, it's not unusual for you to get sick early. I have a story for that. My first year of teaching, I woke up on the second day of school and I had 102 fever. I had strep throat and I felt horrible. Having to call in on the second day of school. I just knew that principal was going to think I was a total flake and think I hired the wrong person. It just can happen. So you're exposed to a lot more germs than you've been around, and so don't put off making that sub folder because you don't ever know when you're going to need it.
And get a flu shot. And Nancy, I got strep throat from here in teacher conferences my first year, so, see, it can even happen and you can wake it up.
And you build up good immunity, and I don't feel like I hardly ever get sick anymore, but I've got everything in the body. And everything.
See, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How do you deal with military movement, with us being a prominent military town? How do you deal with it?
I make a new kid Ziploc. I have a big Ziploc bag, and everything that my students have, I make 1 or 2 kits. Or if I hand something out, like I make a pamphlet for something, or we're doing a simulation right now, so they have a journal, I make 2 extra, and I make 2 new student binders. And so when a new student walks in, I just grab it, it's done, I don't have to think about it, they have everything they need, all they have to do is put their name on it. So I hand them a Sharpie and say, just put your name on all this stuff, and I'll tell you what all it is later. And so they already have everything, and I don't have to go running around and scrambling, because sometimes, I won't check my email the day before, and there's a new student in my room, and it's 8 o'clock, and I'm like, wow, hi. So now I don't have to worry about it. That took me about 5 years to figure out was a good idea. So do that in the first year. You don't have to have my same freak out.
You start at the beginning of the year, the day before school, when you have all the name tags and all those little things, like mine's in the basket, it's the same thing. Like I just put 1 of everything. So if I get a new kid, it's just you grab 1 of everything, write their name on it. First grade, I can't really have them write their name. Little stuff. But not as great legible. But anyway, but it's the same idea. Just do those little things that you can do from the get-go. And have a buddy, have a kid that you know is the go-to kid, and when that new kid comes in, match them up and let them know that that kid's here to help you, and I feel like the kids in Manhattan are pretty resilient to that. They're used to those kids moving in and out. You have a lot of that at all of the schools, and so kids get used to new kids coming in, and it doesn't really. They're good. They become good at welcoming new kids.
Jim talked about relationships being so key in what we do, and that's true for the families too. And so whether they're military or just anybody new through the door, we get a lot of university faculty too that moves in and out. We try to match them up with another family that'll look out for them. And I know I had a mom cry last week because when they came, I always try to give them a tour of the school, and I made sure her kid had one new friend and she had one new friend before they left school that first day. And it always seems like you could just have one friend. everything else will be okay, as long as you just have, you know where the bathroom is, you know where the drinking fountain is, you know they'll feed you, and you have one friend.
I think it's important to get to know their situation, because a lot of the families are, they're two-parent families, but one is missing, one is deployed. And, you know, sometimes they're away from all of their family. So a typical situation is military family comes to Manhattan, and then dad gets deployed, and mom is here and doesn't know anyone. And so sometimes it's very difficult for them to have a good experience. And they sometimes will retreat to their home and not get out much, and it really can be a sad situation. So I just think it's important to make an extra effort to reach out to families in that situation as they move around. They bring a lot to your classroom. A lot of the students have been in many different places and seen a lot of the world and can share a lot of wonderful things with other kids. So just some ideas to look out for.
I am a student teaching this spring, so I'm wondering what advice do you have for a first-year teacher?
Be organized, again, that's an important one. Build those relationships and be prepared for long hours and come prepared. Like people have said, you need to be prepared every day. When you can, get in some other classes, pay attention to what the teacher's doing. Ask them how they start at the beginning of the year. You've had several people have shared how you start at the beginning of the year, but ask them specifically. Ask them about their behavior. Just write down lots of questions. How do you prepare for tests? What do you do when you look at the data and children aren't doing as well as you expected? Just write a lot of those questions down and use that opportunity when you're with that teacher to share on their experience and pull from their experience. But it'll be great. It'll be a great experience, and you'll probably cry when you leave because you built these wonderful relationships with the little people. And but it'll be a good opportunity. Just be open-minded.
Ask a lot of questions of your operating teacher when you go out this spring. I mean, like, even if you think you're asking too many questions, keep asking questions. Because no question at this point is ridiculous. I know they say no, there's no dumb questions, but there really is dumb questions. But keep asking questions and write down the answers. I remember when I was student teaching, it went by so fast. I was just like, oh, what just happened? Oh, 12 weeks, how'd that happen? And so I would just write everything down and reflect on it and think about it. And when you see something you really like in the classroom, write that down. I wrote down tons of quotes that my cooperating teacher just said, and they were just ideas of how that she interacted with her students. I would listen to her and write down things she said to the students because they had a really good relationship with her, and I wanted to get that relationship. So definitely focus on, yes, you have to focus on the teaching part of that, but really focus on what your cooperating teacher does when she interacts or he interacts with the students.
Go to activities with them too, like if there are IEP meetings or staffings, go to those so you can experience that opportunity, because you might have students that have special needs when you teach. And if they're having any PTA activities that you're doing, or family activities, go to those, get to interact with families too.
I would also say you obviously will know the standards for the grade level you're working with, but a lot of people don't think about the pre and the next year. So you need to know what skills they're coming to you with, and if that's where you help find the holes, what do you need to prepare them for the next year.
And then that first year, figure out one way you can be involved in that school community. You'll be assigned a mentor, but there will be, how many of us have committees? We have committees to organize committees. So sign up for a committee, volunteer for a committee, and then seek somebody out who may be like-minded, and find yourself that one friend. That's really important too, that person that you can go to when you're having a rotten day and say, hey, did this ever happen to you? Because this is what happened. You need to be able to let your guard down and have that trust with a colleague too, both with your mentor and maybe an informal mentor. So, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's somebody your same age. you may find that someone who's older and more experienced on the staff may be a real comfortable, almost like a brotherly or fatherly figure that you can go to. So it might not be that you guys are going out on the weekends together, but that's somebody who you can go to during lunch or whatever and say, hey, any ideas on this? So, and your principal can do that for you too. Don't be afraid to ask your principal for help. We're here. We really like helping people, that's why we took this job. So, it's not a sign of weakness to be able to come into your principal's office and say, this didn't work. In fact, I worry more about the teacher that comes into my office after I've gone and observed, and I say, did you have to change anything or make any, modifications to your lesson plan? Nope, I did everything the way, and it all went as I planned. That's not true. No, it's not true. And we want you to be reflective and be able to say, hey, I learned from this mistake. The next time I teach this lesson, I'm going to try this. That's trust, and that's growth. So you learn something new every day you come to school.
Try to make the transition to your professional career, your chosen career as a student teacher. If you walk into that school and you say, I'm still a college student, you dress like you're headed to the Ville, and you act like you're coming from the Ville, you're probably not going to be successful. I had a student teacher who, there was a question about an assignment, and the parent called me, and I said, oh, I didn't give that assignment, my student intern did. So I called him up, and his answering machine said, A is for apple, B is for beer, and that's the reason that we're not here. And I said, wow, what a cool response. Not for my parents, not for my students if they call him and ask him a question. And so think like a professional, act like a professional. Most schools are going to treat you like a professional. You'll see a lot of instruction, some good, some maybe not so good. Don't tell the ones that aren't so good that they're not so good. Just jot it down in your own mind and say, you know what, I'm never going to do that when I have my own classroom. You see something good, you say, I can hardly wait to have my own classroom so I can do that. But I cannot underscore how bad you will fail if you are not professional when you walk into a school.
And it's those little subtle things. People will look you up on Facebook. People will check your Twitter account. All those things tell the story about who you are. And so make sure that you want that to be a good story.
As you start doing your student teaching and into your first year, as in any job, I think, in any elementary school, they're big organizations, they're systems, and there's going to be different groups within each one of those. Some are more positive than others, some are more negative than others. And be very careful on how you choose to present yourself to those groups, which groups you choose to be a part of, and if you choose the positive aspect or the negative aspect. And I think, and I don't care whatever organization you're in, there's going to be different levels within each system. And I would just challenge you to be a part of, and make the decision to be a part of the positive piece of that organization. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're not, try to take the positive aspect and not the negative aspect. Don't get caught up in negativity. It can be easy, but it's your choice to make. And so be extremely careful on how you present yourself and which direction you choose to go, because I think it's going to impact your career for the entire sit of it on which avenue you choose to take. Especially with the state of our state right now, some things that are going on that I'm sure you guys have been aware of and that you've heard about. It can be very easy to take the negative approach. So I challenge each one of you to take the positive approach in everything you do and every interaction you have with colleagues and with kids. I always remember a saying that I always try to follow. Students may not, and my colleagues and people may not always remember what I tell them, but they're always going to remember how I made them feel. And that's really always been really impactful for me for my whole career. And I think that can apply to kids, parents, and colleagues.
I kind of want to go down the line, but I want to know some horror stories, like questions such as where are babies from and how you got out of them, or maybe some things you wish you wouldn't have said it or did say. And I want to know like some horror stories that kids have told you.
Mine's not too terrible. It was my first year teaching at Ogden, so like 5 years ago. And I had been teaching middle school, so sometimes I was very afraid that I was going to say something or behave in a way that was more middle school oriented, not 5th grade. But we were getting to know me first day. They can ask me any question. They're sitting there, and this little guy raises his hand. He says, "How many times have you been married?" So my immediate response was, "Are you asking?" And he got really embarrassed and I felt bad. But so maybe don't be super sarcastic. That's what I probably would have said to a middle schooler. Now I'm thinking maybe I could have handled that better, but he just was like, "Never mind." It was a weird question. I didn't know where to go with it.
My biggest oops, not really oops moments, but funniest ones are generally in kindergarten, first grade somehow end up involved with a word manipulation. So when we change the beginning sound of a word to this, or rhyme with this, or something like that. And so there's word families that I've learned to avoid because kids come up with words they shouldn't. So that's funny. And also, even if you try to avoid a word family, some kid who's not quite getting the concept might kind of accidentally say something that isn't quite appropriate, and the kids that know it's a bad word like perk up, and what I always do is just like, "Oh, you mean this?" and change it real fast. But those are kind of my funniest ones. Seem to always come somehow in word manipulation games.
My first years in education were in special education, my first love. And so I've had some interesting stories. These aren't going to be your funny stories, but one of them was we were having a conversation, and in this particular time I had 4th, 5th, and 6th grade age students, mostly boys with behavior disorders or emotional problems. And we were having a discussion. One of the boys talked about, "Well, what do you do when you and your husband have a fight?" And I said, "We talked about it." And he said, "You mean you don't hit him over the head with a skillet?" I said, "No, we don't do that." So we had a conversation about that. And then another time, the teacher next to me, she said, "Oh, so-and-so told us that his weekend last night, that he heard gunshots last night." I get so tired of his stories. And my parent and I, who had worked together for a long time, said, "Well, he's probably telling you the truth," because we knew where he lived in town, and there was that possibility. And so sometimes you just have to listen to the stories the children say, because you want to get to know them, because sometimes those stories aren't tales. They're things that really have happened. So just, be that. I always tell the parents and the teachers, it only takes one person to make a difference in a child's life. And that can be positive or negative, because you all have memories of a negative and a positive that happened to you up until this moment. And so which one are you going to be? You're going to be that teacher that left that positive or that negative memory? And just pay attention to what the kids are saying. Who are they really? And sometimes they have some strange lives, and you just need to listen to them and help them make it through. Be that relationship person.
Sometimes they tug at your heartstrings big time too. And I taught in Hawaii the first year I taught, and kind of a rough area. And a little girl came to school and told me how her birthday party was ruined because her uncle stabbed her father, and so on and so forth. And I just let her talk. I kind of pulled her aside and let her talk, and then she asked if she could come home with me. But, then you have to go through the conversation of, mom would really miss you, and as much as I like having this time with you, it's tough. It's really tough.
I would encourage you to make a few home visits in your first year. It's just amazing sometimes when you do that, what your eyes are open to. Sometimes we don't realize the conditions that students are living in. And I know when I was a first year teacher, that was a requirement. It was a special project called the school-wide project, and we had very small classes of 14 and 15 students, but we were required to go to every home and visit. And I was just amazed at the things that I learned in going into homes. It was a poor area, but in any situation, I think you will learn a lot about your kids if you just go to their house. Of course, you don't go uninvited, you don't go unannounced, and I would suggest that you go with someone. And I don't think it's necessary to go to everyone's home, but especially if you're new in the community and you don't really know the community very well, it's a great thing to do. You will learn a lot just by doing that.
And you won't necessarily just learn from, because you probably think, well, they live in poor conditions. Sometimes they can be fairly well off and, you know, be doing fine, but the parents are so busy doing their thing that they forget that they do have children that need their attention too. So you might find some things like that, but you also find some very loving and wonderful families too, because there are some great people out there.
Oh, yes, I remember going to making a home visit in Junction City, and I was talking to the mother, and there were triplets in the house that were 4 years old, and they had, in the background of my conversation with the mother, these triplets had knives, and they were trying to cut these plastic bottles that had pop in them, and I kept saying, do you want them to have, I just didn't know what to say to her. I thought it was so unsafe, and I thought someone was going to get hurt. But you just don't ever know what you're going to see, what you're going to find out. The different ways that parents parent, and when you see how it happens, you'll know a lot more about why the children in your room do the things the way they do.
Yeah, see, I had a monkey jump out from behind the sofa and land on my shoulder when
That did not happen to me.
I had a moose bite me on the bottom on my way up the sidewalk to do a home visit out when I was working in a school out in the country. And I had a naked father join us in the living room because he didn't know that we actually had an appointment, and he didn't know we were coming, and he just woke up. And he just said hi, opened up the refrigerator, got out the jug of milk, drank it, went back in his bedroom. And so when you're asking about horror stories, I thought, now I can remember some.
You know, over the years, you're gonna have kids that make you laugh your heart out. They're gonna make you cry. They're gonna make you feel bad for their situation. Sometimes those situations require you to report to Department of Children and Families, and sometimes they just give you some insight into where that kid's coming from. But when I was teaching 6th grade, we had the DARE officer come in, policeman taught drug addiction, resistance education or something, DARE anyway. And a part of the program, they brought in samples of drugs so the kids would know what they looked like. And I don't know what the purpose was, but they passed around a bag of marijuana, a little bag of marijuana, and one of the kids said, wow, my dad has a bunch of this stuff. And the policeman was like, well, what's his name again? But, it was funny to see, but at the same time, you also know where that kid comes from and what he sees at home. And we laughed when it happened, but then you realize, oh man, what's that kid go home to? And so, you could probably tell stories, funny and nightmarish all day long, but you'll experience it over the years that you'll realize it's part of what helps you build that relationship with that child, because you know them better. You know where they come from.
Well, we're out of time, guys. Sorry. Secondary groups should be coming up really soon, so let's give them a round of applause for coming. I've heard stories I've never heard before. I'm sure you guys heard some stories you've never heard of before. Once the secondary group comes up, we do have gifts for our panelists, so please stick around. Thank you guys for coming, and I'm sure you guys are going to stick around a little bit afterwards, so if you have any questions for any panelists, they'll be willing to answer it, because they're all amazing.
And on behalf of the kids at Bergen, thanks so much for coming over for Read Across America, and for those of you that came for our Valentine party, what a fun time. Thank you for making it special.
Erie County Schools is a great place to work.
There's no competition here, just so you know.
And if you want any more pizza, we do have pizza left over. Please take it, because I don't want it.